You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com with Peter H. and Stevie J. Find them on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks. And now, for all the news, reviews, and interviews in mixed martial arts, it's time for Glove Up or Shut Up from AngryMarks.com.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here at AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Good evening, Peter. Lots to talk about on the show, so I won't keep you waiting. Let's get right to the news.
Well, you're not going to talk about Villanova winning the Final Four?
No, I'm going to talk about something much bigger than that, at least to the two of us. I'm going to talk about the fact that, once again, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson is not happening.
This is not a repeat episode, folks.
No, this is not a broken record, although it is a very broken LCL, I believe is what he tore.
Yep.
Lateral cruciate ligament.
Yeah, I've heard that exact ligament. I didn't tear it off the bone like El Kukui did, but it is a bugger of an injury, so...
Yeah, and it happened in the most freakish of ways. He was at a media event. He saw some friend or familiar person he knew that he hadn't seen in a long time. He pivoted around on his leg to turn and talk to them, and it just snapped clean off the bone.
So, I mean, yes, it's a freak accident, but you gotta think, if this happened in the cage, if that ligament was that bad a shape...
Right. It may be fortuitous that it happened before the fight rather than during the fight, but it's not for the future of the interim title anyway, because Dana White said, quote, that goes away.
Yeah, so the interim title becomes official, and we now have a new main event for this weekend's UFC show, and it's someone some fight fans might be very familiar with.
Yes, the featherweight champion, Max Holloway, coming off a broken ankle, mind you, with only 2 months rest and basically no time at all to cut weight, was offered this fight 10 pounds up, and he said, hell yeah, let's do this. And if you look at it from his point of view, like you always like to say, Peter, he's got absolutely nothing to lose. He's playing with a full house, and he knows that whatever his opponent's got, it doesn't match what he's got right now, because if he loses, he's still the featherweight champion, and if he wins, taking the fight on short notice and moving up in weight, he's a legend.
A legend meaning dual champ, or just a legend?
I think both apply. I think that doesn't matter. I think he's a dual champ and a legend.
Yeah, well...
And there's actually a third bonus. I didn't even mention this one. Think of the rematch you could make. Holloway-McGregor 2.
Yeah.
That would be epic. If he wins, that would be epic.
Because, let's see, there's only been one dual champion before.
Well, in UFC, we're not talking about other organizations.
No, we're not talking about Dan Henderson. That's a totally different weight class. But
actually, I wasn't even referring just to Pride. I was also talking about one fighting and World Series of fighting.
That's true. But a rematch, that would definitely be the showstopper fight that McGregor, who we haven't heard from in, I don't know, since the Mayweather fight. I mean, that would be a great fight for him to come back to.
If they can talk him into it, if they can make the right money offer, but I think he would look back on his previous win over Holloway and go, yeah, I could do that again.
But was he officially stripped of the title?
I would interpret what Dana White said as meaning that Conor is no longer the champion, because you can't have two champions of the same weight class. You could have an interim champion and a champion, but you can't have two champions.
Like, you can have a unification fight, but...
what you can do is you can bring Conor McGregor back and you can say he's fighting for the title he never lost.
True. Now, in that weight class, is Conor McGregor still listed even though he's not really an active fighter?
Oh, man.
Because I can't remember him being in the rankings.
I'm honestly not able to remember where he is other than pound for pound, which is number 2.
Yeah.
So I'm looking just to see. He's still listed in the rankings as the lightweight champion as of right now, but this has not been updated because this news just broke the other day. Because right now it still lists Tony Ferguson as the interim champion, and since Dana said that goes away, since he's not going to be back in 6 months, and they're not going to keep an interim champion, this fight's going to be for the real championship. I assume once this gets updated and once a ranking advisory goes out, it will say Khabib Nurmagomedov is number 1, Tony Ferguson is no longer active, and no champion will be listed until after Saturday night.
So, I'm just thinking from McGregor's standpoint, we talked about this with Cain Velasquez being inactive for so long. At what point does Conor become inactive to the point where they take him off the rankings entirely?
I think they're going to wait as long as they possibly can with that, considering that he's still in the pound-for-pound list. So I wouldn't hurry if I was them because they still want to promote him as one of their top stars, given all the brand deals that he's doing right now and his highly visible appearances in the media. I think they would absolutely wait to take him off the pound-for-pound list because I don't think you have to be an active full-time fighter holding a title to actually be in that list.
Yeah, Rousey was on that list for a long time before they finally took her off as well, so.
I believe you're right about that. I think Rousey fell out of the top 15 once more dominant women came to the fore, but she stayed active in the bantamweight rankings for quite a while.
Now, El Kukui, that's an injury that obviously he's out for a good 6 months.
That's why they're taking away his interim title.
Yeah, 6 months, that's, what are we now, April? So that's October. Good fight camp. If he gets lucky, maybe end of the year?
Maybe.
You don't want to rush a knee injury, that's for damn sure.
No.
Especially with his offense. Like, some fighters rely more on this and that, but not El Kukui. I mean, that's a real shame because we remember him, hell, when he first started, and his climb to the top has been memorable, very memorable. And the point where he's finally at the apex, and this happens.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of feel for the guy.
Yeah, it's not the first time we've had freak accidents and freak injuries in this fight, so I do kind of feel for him, but I also feel like this fight is cursed, and I agree with Dana White when he says, we're never making this fight again, forget it.
No, you ever hear the expression, the hockey gods? You know,
yeah.
It's the same thing with MMA. If something happened here, it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's move on to the main event then. It is, man, I'm not going to say a better fight, it's a more intriguing fight because you have someone jumping up in weight, but boy, oh boy, if you had to handicap this fight right now, I mean, jeez, I'm at a loss of words. I mean, I can make the case for both fighters here, but, you know, if I had to put a gun to my head, I'm going to go with Khabib just because it's his weight class.
And the fact that he's known to just dominate people on the ground, to just take people off their feet, no matter how good their takedown defense is. He takes them down and pounds on them and makes their lives miserable.
Yeah, well, maybe he can. Well, the thing is,
you can't discount Max Holloway on short notice with all the chips on the table and nothing to lose by losing, going out there, pouring his heart into it for one round at least, and maybe landing that classic knockout punch of his.
But you gotta think his mobility is going to be lessened because of the injury.
That's the thing that I said 1 round for. I'm thinking about the fact that if that ankle starts hurting real bad, he ain't going 5 rounds. And Khabib picks that ankle and takes him down and starts pounding on him, that could be a short night. So let's see if the 1 round blitz can work, because Max Holloway in 1 round could do anything, but over 5 rounds, that favors Khabib.
Well, I mean, it's a very intriguing fight, and, it's going to be interesting from, a few different aspects, because the longer the fight goes, yes, it would definitely favor Khabib, but, I mean, I've never doubted Holloway's cardio. I mean, obviously, an ankle injury would definitely slow your cardio training, but he's had gas for days, so it's not like he has a very small gas tank to begin with,
No, I agree with that.
Now, we have to go through the rest of the news because we've got UFC and Bellator to talk about as well this week. But obviously, that was the big news item this week was the injury to El Kukui. It's weird to think that, I don't know. We're coming off spring break, I guess, so to speak, and now we have this to deal with right off the top, Stevie. It's kind of interesting, but I do want to mention that, just moving on, Justin Gaethje, apparently, he's going to be asking for a rematch with Eddie Alvarez or a shot at the title. If you're Gaethje, what would you rather do?
Title.
Title? You don't want a piece of Eddie Alvarez?
I'd go for the title.
I mean, it's interesting. It's a good...
the champ makes the money, as they say.
The champ does make the money, that's for sure. You caught me off guard with that one. I saw that with... I mean, yeah, you want to fight for the title, obviously, but Eddie Alvarez rematch, I mean, if that's something that's stuck in your craw, as you like to say, it's something where that could be more important to have that rematch as opposed to getting a title shot. I mean, you could beat Alvarez and use that as momentum to get the title.
I think it can go either way.
Yeah. Apparently, the opening odds for Khabib versus Holloway is Khabib's a 5-1 favorite.
That doesn't surprise me.
That's a little high, but we'll see what happens. Apparently, Rafael Natal is retired due to an eye injury, but never say never.
Yeah.
That sucks. I mean, you never want to go out like that with an eye injury.
No, but it's not really unprecedented. In fact, we several times on this show called for Michael Bisping to retire because of his eye injury.
He's still not retired, is he?
No. And if he's not, he should be.
Oh, jeez. Well, speaking of injuries, Matt Brown has pulled out of his fight at UFC Fox 29 against Carlos Condit. Another knee injury, Stevie. It's a torn ACL.
Oh, man.
Jeez. And Matt Brown's a tough SOB, so...
Yeah, he wouldn't pull out if it wasn't really terrible.
No. He's tough. No one's ever questioned his toughness, that's for sure. Well, that's basically all the news I have here, except there was something that just came across here for UFC. Apparently, it looks like we're going to get Donald Cerrone and Yvonne Edwards Fight Night 132.
Okay.
That one just came across here, and of course we've got for those who haven't seen it, the latest Embedded series came out with Holloway and Khabib having their first face-to-face. So I wonder if the embedded cameras caught the injury with El Kukui.
If they did, I don't even know if I want to see it. It sounds like it was pretty gruesome.
Yeah. Oh, and for those who are wondering, the commentators for UFC 223 are Anik, Smith, and Rogan.
Okay.
So that's all the news I have here. Most of my news was involving the Ferguson the Ferguson injury. So let's move on. Stevie, would you rather talk about the Khabib Holloway card, or do you want to jump over to Bellator 196 with Henderson and Huerta?
Let's start with Khabib and Nurmagomedov.
All right. So Brooklyn, New York. It's obviously the main event. Khabib versus Max main event. Well, I already said I'm picking Khabib, but are you going to go with Holloway, or you're gonna go with the Russian here?
Well, as much as I like the idea of the one-round blitz and how much of a Cinderella story that would be, I feel like it's got to come down to Khabib being able to survive that blitz and take him into the deep water and drown him with wrestling, because Khabib does that to so many people. So I'm looking at a live line right now that says Khabib minus 470, Holloway plus 375. That makes sense to me. I'm going with Khabib.
Yeah. Well, the co-main event is Joanna versus Rose, the rematch. Boy, this is going to be a hard fight to pick. Joanna obviously looking to avenge her loss, and Rose trying to prove that it wasn't a fluke.
It's pretty close to a pick'em, so I can understand your difficulty here.
It's the heart versus head argument, right? Sometimes you want to go with what brought you to the dance, and sometimes you want to go with, who the more intelligent pick is. I'm going to go with Joanna, but, if I had to pick this fight 10 times, it's going to be 5-5.
Well, just for the sake of being different here, I'll go with the current champion, Rose. Even though she's the plus 100 underdog, Joanna is a slight favorite at minus 120. But, as you said, we could pick this fight 10 times, go 6 one way and 4 the other, or even 5-5. So, it's that close. But I almost feel at this point, Rose deserves a little more respect than that, considering she did knock off the champion, and I don't think she's going to come in less prepared than she was for the first fight. So let's give her the chance to defend that title. I don't think it's going to go down in history as a fluke.
I think that Joanna's game plan will be drastically different, and that might confuse Rose.
Yeah, well, one way it should definitely be different is don't stand in front of her.
Yeah, don't do the Ronda Rousey, just walk through the offense and take her down. That's not going to happen.
No, be smarter than that.
Calvin Kattar and Renato Moicano.
I think that's Moicano, actually.
Moicano? Okay.
Moicano. Renato
18...
Moicano is plus 115. Calvin Kattar is minus 135.
Another close fight.
That's true.
I've got Kattar split decision.
Well, let me think about that a little. You didn't even analyze it or break it down, so I wasn't expecting you to just give a glib answer that quickly. Moicano.
Well, I'm looking at it like 18-2 versus 11-1-1.
Right, and the only guy that Moicano has lost to in his UFC career is Brian Ortega, but then Brian Ortega does that to everybody. He just submits one person after another, so no shame in that. And before that, he did beat Jeremy Stevens, who I think we both agree is one of the toughest fighters in that entire division.
Yeah.
That is a huge feather in your cap to beat Jeremy Stevens, so let's call this one a slight upset, because I'm going to go with Moicano over Kattar.
Okay. This one is very interesting indeed. Anthony Pettis and Michael Chiesa.
Now, this time I'm going to be the one that's glib. I'm going to pick Michael Chiesa.
Yeah, I don't think Anthony Pettis is the same Pettis as was before.
He's not even close at this point. This is going nowhere fast for him with 5 losses in his last 7 fights. And the only one that he looked impressive in was the guillotine choke of Charles Oliveira. Even in the win over Jim Miller, he went the distance, so didn't exactly light my world on fire with that performance, especially since Jim Miller is kind of the elder statesman of the sport.
And Chiesa, you know, I don't want to use the term up-and-comer because he's proven himself.
Yeah, it's not like he's new to the game of mixed martial arts. This dude's been putting in work for a long time.
No, but my point is he's on fourth fight from the top. A win over a name opponent like Pettis, it could definitely elevate his stock. So
yeah, more so than beating Jim Miller or Francisco Trinaldo. This one could really, really boost him up. Beating a former champion, he'd really have a big calling card with that.
Another good fight here, Paul Felder and Ally Aquinta.
Ooh, yeah. They have done a pretty good job of loading up this UFC 223 card. Despite the various injury problems and whatnot, they've put together some good fights. And I like the Dragon versus Iaquinta, and the odds are pretty close for this one. Plus 100 for the Dragon, minus 120 for Iaquinta. Once again, I'm feeling like getting froggy here with the upsets. I'm going with the slight dog Felder.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It's pretty much identical stats here.
Everything else is virtually identical.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I'm going to go with Felder as well, but this one I think goes the distance. Maybe
Sure.
2 rounds to 1.
And then we got one hell of a prelim card on FS1. You got Kowalkiewicz versus Herrig. You got Ray Borg versus Brandon Moreno. You got Joe Lozon versus Kritz Grutzmacher. And you've got Evan Dunham versus Olivier Aubin-Mercier. So which of these do you want to talk about, Peter?
Well, obviously the Dunham-Aubin-Mercier fight will be good. Grutzmacher and Lozon. Lozon, I'm surprised he's still fighting, but try telling him he needs to quit.
Yeah, I don't think that guy's retiring until they force him to.
Borg and Marino has potential to be good. And
Borg is a heavy favorite in that fight. He's minus 280. Moreno is plus 240.
Tempting. No, not that tempting.
Speaking of heavy favorites, Kowalkiewicz is minus 190. Herrig is plus 165. Don't count her out. Herrig has gotten some big upsets before.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a fight you need to watch as well. I'm more looking at the undercard on the Fight Pass.
Oh, yeah, because you got Caceres and Lobov. And I like Bruce Leroy in that one. Minus 145 to plus 125.
Evan Smith and Rawlings?
Oh, yeah, that's a good fight, too. Rowdy Beck Rawlings, plus 165. She's another one I wouldn't count out for an upset.
Well, I mean, there's some decent fights all over this card, so this could be, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to have decision after decision, but this could be a card where it could be card of the year almost, because it has potential to have 8 or 9 exciting fights here.
I agree. This is a card that, as Brian Alvarez likes to say, on paper, has the potential to be really good.
Now, let's cross the pond and, well, way past the pond. Let's go to Budapest, Hungary for Bellator 196.
That is correct, sir. And we have a main event of El Matador, Roger Huerta, returning to Bellator with a one-fight deal to take on Smooth Benson Henderson.
Now, why is it a one-fight deal?
Because in the words of his interview with me on MMA Mania, Huerta believes they didn't offer him enough money for a multi-fight deal, so he'd rather take one fight, prove his worth by getting a big win over Henderson, and then get more money for the next deal.
So he's using Ben Henderson as a stepping stone?
Well, considering Henderson is 1-3 in 4 Bellator fights, that's a gamble that might be worth taking.
Well, I mean, the show is airing on Paramount, but obviously it's gonna be on tape delay. I'm not even sure when the live results will start to trickle in, but...
Well, I'm doing my recap as they air it, so if you want the results that are not spoilers, tune into MMA Mania at 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday night.
Now, Benson Henderson, I don't know. Like, this is an opponent. This is a fight he should win, though, isn't it?
You would think in theory, but then we've said that several times about several other Bellator fights that he's been in, so I really, really, really hate saying this because I am a Benson Henderson fan going all the way back to his days as a WEC champion. I thought he was phenomenal back then. I thought he was phenomenal when he became the UFC champion. I thought he was phenomenal coming over to Bellator. And I know a lot of people dinged him for always getting a decision in a close fight, but you know, that was one of Benson Henderson's greatest strengths, was that he could find ways to technically outpoint and outscore just about anybody. And that is an admirable quality. And he's got star power, which is why Bellator signed him. They know that the guy is popular, likable. Sometimes his fights are controversial, but that's not always a bad thing in the world of mixed martial arts. At least he's not controversial for acting like an idiot and getting in trouble all the time, so you can't hang that one on his head. He's one of the classiest guys in this sport, which is why it pains me to say that Benson Henderson is not what he used to be. I hate saying that. I hate that with all of my heart because I admire this man so much and I have so much respect for him. But to me, on paper, this fight is a lot closer to even than it ever should have been.
Well, both fighters are looking for their 25th win. So there's definitely some tread loss on those tires. Now,
the reason that I tend to agree with your argument in certain respects is because there's been a lot more pit holes that Roger Huerta has fallen into than Benson Henderson. Okay, Henderson's not had a great record in Bellator, but that being said, it's not for lack of trying because he did go out there and have one hell of a match with Michael Chandler and nearly took the title. It's not like all four of those fights he looked bad. A couple maybe. Not all four of them. And on the other hand, Roger Huerta, he was 1-2 in 3 Bellator fights. He was 2-3 in 5 one-fighting bouts. And one of the last 2 fights that he won was when his opponent got disqualified for an illegal elbow. So you have him winning his last bout in one fighting by split decision and then winning another fight by disqualification. So you can say he's on a 2-fight win streak, technically speaking, but that 2-fight win streak ain't setting the world on fire.
No. Boy, this is a very international card. Obviously, it's in Hungary, so you got a lot of international fighters here. In fact, I only see one American on the main card besides the main eventers, and that is Ed Ruth against Ian Pascu.
Yeah, and Pascu is a sort of a late notice replacement, as are a whole lot of people on this card, if I'm being just honest about it.
Well, I mean, the co-main event is Alan Borix against Tedor Nikolaev.
Adam Borix.
Adam Borix, sorry.
Yeah, he was originally supposed to be in the main event against James Gallagher, but Gallagher withdrew due to an injury.
Oh, jeez. We talked about him last week.
Yeah.
Jeez, the injury bug just doesn't want to stop this year, does it?
No. So, getting back to predictions, since we're going to run this top to bottom, I suppose, I'm picking Roger Huerta for the upset by TKO, and Borix and Theodore Nikolov also coming in as a replacement for Gaja, however you say that guy's name. I'm giving Adam Borix the win via first-round rear naked choke because Borix is pretty decent with his submission game, and he's fighting in front of the hometown fans in Hungary, and he's undefeated thus far. And I think that he's got some benefits here to not only being the guy that's not the replacement fighter that's been in training for this fight the whole time, despite numerous changes of opponents, but he's also pretty big at this weight. at 5'11", so I feel like he's got a size advantage as well.
Well, I'm going to go with Benson in the main event and Borix in the co-main.
Okay. Then we got Kielholtz and Petra Kastkova. Kastkova is another late replacement coming in for Elena Ovechnikova.
And she's tall. She's 5'7".
Yeah. She's got size on Kielholtz, but, this is one of those cases where I'm actually not going to go with the size differential because Kielholtz is one hell of a kickboxer.
She impressed you in that last fight.
Absolutely. And Kielholtz, striking with anybody, regardless of how much taller they are, can find the mark. And I would not put it past her to stop Kastkova as a late replacement, considering that Kastkova has lost 2 of her last 3 fights. I'm predicting a TKO win by Kielholtz.
Taller opponent, bigger target to hit.
Yeah, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. We've seen that with Stefan Struve.
Now, this next one here with Belsanti and Moore, I'm looking at this as a coin flip. What about you?
I'm giving a slight edge to Brian Moore because he did one thing that absolutely impressed me. He got to the 3rd round with A.J. McKee. Not many people manage that.
McKee is not exactly, what am I going to say here? McKee is known for his finishes, right? Like he shuts you down early to get to the 3rd round. Even in a loss, that is an accomplishment.
Exactly. That's why I feel like he's got some staying power in this fight, and Belsanti is a very middling fighter, 7-6-1. I feel like they're giving Brian Moore a chance here to follow up on that fight with McKee and take an impressive win home. So I'm going to give him a 3rd round knockout in this one.
Okay, I could see that. And Pascu and Ruth?
I think there's little to no question here that Ed Ruth takes him down and pounds on him.
How do you say no mas and...
Yeah, you say no mas in whatever language Pascu speaks, but let's give him a small, very small chance in this fight, considering he's 17-7, but I don't think he's ever faced a wrestler like Ed Ruth.
So there is one prelim card that won't be televised, and I have a start time of 3:30 Eastern in the afternoon. So if every fight goes the distance, we're looking at 3:34, 4:35, 5:36. Benson Henderson main event will start around 6 p.m. Eastern.
Right. But again, I'm not thinking about that, and don't you dare tweet me. I'm going to recap it like it's live for me, because that's my job. That's what they pay me to do.
All right. Well, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP? Wait, let me guess. There's something happening in New Orleans this weekend?
Dude, there's like 20 things happening in New Orleans this weekend.
It's WrestleMania weekend. Ronda Rousey is on the main card in a mixed tag as her and Kurt Angle against the power couple of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon.
That's right. And you've also got Brock Lesnar defending his Universal title against Roman Reigns. You've got the Dream Match, a Wrestle Kingdom 10 rematch between champion AJ Styles and challenger winner of the Royal Rumble, Shinsuke Nakamura. Then, just maybe, even though they haven't made it official, wink wink, we've got John Cena versus The Undertaker. And we've got so many other cards going on that weekend. You've got progress shows. You've got a Ring of Honor Super card. You've got the WrestleCon. I can't even begin to name it all, but we'll talk about as much of it as we can stand to with our special guest, John Harder.
Now, I do want to mention 2 names that will be involved this weekend. Shayna Baszler, obviously in the co-main event for the NXT show, challenging for the women's title, and I believe Matt Riddle has a show as well in New Orleans.
Right, and I expect the Queen of Spades to take that title from Ember Moon.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great weekend for wrestling fans, and hopefully next year, who knows? Maybe next year's WrestleMania we'll do the Glow Up or Shut Up show live from New Jersey. Who knows?
Maybe. It's always a possibility.
All right. Well, for Stevie J, I'm Peter H., the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.